Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and of course, I feel happy, I feel proud, I feel excellent, I feel vivacious. I'm starting to feel recharged. I'm having an excellent time as I am moving about with with the only young lady in my life, Dr. Cheryl Clarke, as we are finally taking a little respite and taking a little time for each other, just us, in regards to these over 36 years, but 31 of them married, togetherness. Now, have they been perfect? Hell no. Have they always been, things that you can always say everything is always, just roses and candy and all that good stuff? Of course not. Any relationship that's worth having has its respective, bumps in the road, but you start to recognize that, the individual that you're choosing to develop a life with is someone that not only did you choose, but you recognize that all of those, minor bumps were there for your development. So for those of you out there who are moving and shaking and having those anniversaries and you built a life with someone, if anyone tells you that it's going to be perfect, no arguments, this, that, and the third, and no discord, they lying to you. Run from them. At least if you are in consultation with myself and Dr. Cheryl, when we do our couples thing, you start to recognize we come to you with the real, come to you with the expressions that can develop life. And being honest for the majority is the best thing that works for you, because not being honest doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And if you're not in communication, it doesn't work. Starting to recognize now we can't just talk to each other. We have to be in the space of truly being in communication so certain things can land appropriately and confidently, so that we can take certain things to the levels that they deserve to be. And so the reason why, for those who came in a little earlier, usually always play some songs, or, just to lay the foundation. And then, even though I love Prince to me in some ways, but that's another argument for another day, was a master, was a tremendous master. But this past weekend, we were able to, for those of you, unless you've been on the rock, they released the movie Michael over this past weekend. And I have to shout out my eldest son, Jason Clark, because he set up a great scenario for not only like as a pre-Mother's Day gift for Dr. Cheryl, but also, a pre-Mother's Day gift for my mother-in-law and all six children, even the ones that are not living in the state. Everyone came up together. It was nice. It was probably still perfect, even though Saturday was a rainy day, but it was still perfect. Everyone made it. Camaraderie, regardless of whatever the intrapersonal situations are. It was still great to see all of them in the space together, regardless of whatever it is, because life is going to life. But for those of you, definitely will not spoil it, because since we were able to see the movie from us, it was a very good experience. They did a good job. At least it didn't feel documentary like. It felt like they put some effort into it. The young man who ended up transforming into Michael, who's a blood relative, I mean, he did an excellent job. And I mean, it was believable, it was real. And, you know, I desired to let Dr. Cheryl speak on it a bit, because, she was an individual who had our children watching, the VH1 movie miniseries. So I guess that's another reason why our children became such Michael Jackson fans. Some of them had on their T-shirts and things of that nature to remind themselves of their connection to Michael. But I don't desire to hog up the space. So let me introduce Dr. Cheryl Clarke. As because if it wasn't for her, those children wouldn't be here. And so it was great to see that they all came out to, just to, acknowledge and just to come together regardless of anything. So Dr. Cheryl, the floor is yours. What were your thoughts about this past weekend and the like?
Well, thank you, Dr. Clark, and I really will say that it was a night to remember, an afternoon to remember, as we went and saw the earlier show. But I just wanted to say that I think this is a lot of what your platform does and my platform does, is that the pertinent conversations that you're having when your children are younger and when families are younger, it's important to understand what family is about and also understand what you're communicating. And like Dr. Clark was also talking about talking and communicating, and that those what I was communicating with them when they were little, with Michael Jackson, the story or whatever, you could see it playing out in their adulthood, and even with the coordination. Like my husband said, my son, my oldest son, took the reins. I did nothing. He even brought his parents tickets. So, it was amazing how it was a thing that it's important for us to understand how that you're teaching through modeling. You don't really have to say a lot. And the movie was great, but I think the bigger picture behind it was just that we all came together. Even though some may not be speaking to this one or in the argument with this one, it didn't matter. We all came together to celebrate together. So I thought that was great. Thank you.
No problem. Let's see, let's see. I wouldn't be surprised if Miss Johnson had on her shiny glove and was out there on the low and saying so let's get Miss Johnson's perspective as an individual who loves art, is a creative and a techie. She's a creative and a techie. So those of you who don't know Miss Johnson's background, she's very integral when it comes to that administration end. But Miss Johnson, do you have any thoughts about Michael and all that other stuff? Were you he this past weekend?
I, in fact, did not he nor he. I'm still somewhat upset at Mr. Jackson as he chose to be with the Lord on my birthday. Still feel a way
Oh,
about
that's
that, but
right.
I will at some point view his uh, partial documentary because Jen is not in there.
Mhm.
But now I'm waiting for the crowds to die down because in New York, some people are somewhat fanatic.
Mm.
So I'll wait till they've had their share and I'll check it out later. I'm complete.
Excellent, excellent. That is true. Miss Johnson brought up a great point. When we were there on Saturday, since it was like the second or third day, I say the second or third day because usually they always do the pre, even though it releases on the Friday, they have free showings on Thursdays. Some places even had it on Wednesday nights. So, but on Saturday when we went, we as a family, people, were represented for Michael, in the appropriate way, maybe had a t-shirt on, some sort of paraphernalia but we saw people dressed to the nines. There were people coming in there like they were, one person came in there dressed like he was doing, Can't Stop Till You Get Enough one of Michael's first music videos or, had the white glove or looked like they were in the Thriller or Beat It or, just a manifestation. And, and we were able to take pictures, in front of some of the, promotional items that were there. And it was just a cool moment just to see that, we had someone from our community who represented powerfully, and as Ms. Johnson stated, he did leave June 25th, 2009. Because I'll never forget that day, because the day when he transitioned, myself and my mother-in-law, we was watching the very first Transformers movie, and we were in the movie theater. We wondered why when we came out in the Bronx, and probably Ms. Johnson knows this, we was at over there at Co-op at the AMC. And we came out after the movie and people crying. We were like, are we at war again? Is this another 9/11? And people walking around in a stupor. And it's like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, got to the car, turned on the news. I mean, even the radio stations, Hot 97 and Kiss FM, which was hopeful it was still around at the time, just started saying, we regret to inform you that, the king of pop, Michael Jackson, is, died suddenly at the age of, it was like, Michael died? Can you believe that? But one thing about Michael, and just like I said, I won't spoil the movie, and we know there's going to be a second part, and it's true, and my wife brought it to my attention. There was like at least one or two siblings who I don't know if they agreed with it or chose not to have their sons selves as a part of the story, but Janet was definitely one of them. And I think my wife brought it to my attention. I don't think we saw that much of Reby. But Toya was definitely there as a sister. And it was just kind of weird in that aspect. But, maybe we'll see what happens when the second part comes out. Because, yeah, I just did a kind of a spoiler. There will be a second part because you can tell by how they left it. There will definitely be the story is nowhere near ended. But, sometimes you just have to understand and just recognize how Michael was not in a identity. He was at one point when he was just doing things for his family or doing things that wasn't creatively aspiring for himself. He was moving in a identity, and as you see his progression, as you see his creativity, as he starts to manifest himself, you start to see got the identity became lesser and lesser, and then by the time we get that in prime Michael Jackson, it was a force to be reckoned with. So I'm happy for those who have joined us the past couple of weeks for the first two parts of the identity. And that is a great segue as we come into this concluding part in the Dynasty Path. Tonight we'll complete that part. And next week, definitely when we're back in terra firma, we're going to start getting back into some of the other things that you can utilize as a part your financial strategies. We having those conversations where here at the Comeback Collective Circle, it's about application. It's not about just sharing you tools and just saying, okay, we shared you a tool, go run with it. No, we're about recognizing that even at times we are in the midst of applying. Myself and Dr. Cheryl Clarke are in the midst of doing some of the things that we share because the greatest space that you can ever do is to be in practice. But some of us who may have had our master's degrees, when we got our master's degree or we started moving towards those realms, we were in practicums. We were in spaces where we may have had one identity, but as we're in practice, we're starting to evolve. It's not that we're changing, becoming bougie or becoming something different. We start to recognize we are evolving because now we're actually practicing what we have studied. And by you practicing what you have studied, now you're moving towards that space of mastery. And mastery comes in so many other different forms. And, mastery just doesn't happen just because you went to school. Mastery happens in life. And as we continue to delve into this area of recognizing that there is a business of living, we are responsible to make sure that we are being powerful in our respective pathways. So without further ado, let us jump into the teaching. I'm happy to see Mr. Franklin's in the building. I know looking well, looking healthy, looking powerful. So I'm happy that he is with us as well. And the rest of the members of the company, Comeback Collective Circle, who are starting to get themselves settled in. But we're going to get into teaching. We're not going to take too long. We're not going to, do that belaboring. That's not good. That's not good. And, hopefully as we continue to get better at this, let us make sure, you know, okay, let's see. Wait, come here. Yeah, there we go. Because we won't hide you. We learned about that. Okay. How we looking, Miss Franklin? I mean, Miss Johnson, are we looking better? Are we starting to look better?
Yeah, we have one little line and now it's gone. We're good.
Okay, good, good, good. How about now?
Perfect.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We're starting to cook with better gas. We're starting to cook with better gas. So, if you were with us in the previous dispensations, now we are in part three of the identity. Now we're moving towards the plan. And this deals with the comeback framework. So, Ms. Johnson, can you read that paragraph for me, please?
The comeback framework is not a single dramatic moment. It is a four-part process of intentional realignment. Each stage builds on the last and moves you closer to full activation of your God-given identity and financial authority.
Now, the first one is alignment. See, alignment means that are you willing to accept the identity quickly? And sometimes we can procrastinate, we can be belaboring, and we could be recognized, we could be tugging back and forth about, am I supposed to be doing this? Is this truly my calling? Am I supposed to be doing this? And in that time frame, we're creating levels of procrastination, which is not workable for us. Because at times, certain things were just given to us because that's what was given to us. And when we start to recognize that, as I read the underpinning under alignment, when we start to recognize when we stop negotiating with God about who he says you are, The faster you agree with the declaration, the faster your life reorganizes around your true assignment. That's what it's ultimately about. And one of the things that I can preface and even piggyback off of what Michael was doing, as Michael kept hearing these things and you keep seeing his creative process, you started to recognize, God gave him something. And he knew he had to get that thing out of him. And it couldn't be structured, not whatever his father said, not what industry said, not what anyone said. He knew what he heard. I mean, there's even things as when you start to see how you can be a gatherer of people when you're in your proper alignment. Your assignment will bring people towards you, will help accentuate your name. And it's not about just to say, oh, I just do, and I desire these things so I can be successful, have more money. No, because when you're truly in your assignment, the money follows. When you're chasing the dollars, and we did that I think definitely last week, and we're going to touch upon it a little bit later, but when you're chasing as an employee, at times you are chasing the dollar. I'm an employee. I'm supposed to get X amount of dollars. I need my check. But when you start to get in proper alignment, you start to recognize after a while, you're not no longer chasing a check. But if you're chasing your assignment, the money starts chasing you. Now, that brings us to gatekeeping. Gatekeeping allows you to protect your mental inputs. Now, why is that so important, Dr. Clarke? The reason why gatekeeping is so important because you have to recognize what you are allowing to come into your full being. What is it that you're allowing your psyche to entertain? What is it that as you establish yourself, there's going to be so many things out there that's going to attempt to pull your focus. And if you're not doing conscious gatekeeping, you are positioning yourself to say, oh, I'm just going to accept what the world mind says, and that's it. And next, you get caught up in the world mind. You're not getting caught up in the mind that God put within you. So gatekeeping, as I go a little further, guard what enters your mind. Means you get rid of the toxic voices, the comparison traps. What are the Joneses doing over there? How come we don't have? And fear-based media will reconstruct the identity if you're not vigilant about your mental environment. See, the identity every single day is attempting to rear itself. It's ready to jump up in all of us and say, okay, you're going to play small today. You're going to move in the fear-based aspect, which is false evidence appearing real. You're going to move in all these areas that's going to put you in a space that, there's no money out here. Who told you that lie? I know myself and Dr. Cheryl Clarke were talking, I think it was on Monday. We started having a great conversation. We started thinking about the whole thing about the economy. And yes, people are being affected. We're not being disrespectful or minimizing the fact that, yes, we're all being affected by this particular economic stance. But it's interesting how people have money to prepare themselves for a two-headed concert that's going to be crisscrossing the country in the summertime. They're saying that the economy is bad. But a bunch of those shows are either sold out, and some of the ticket prices that were for this particular tour that's going to happen, especially during the summertime, you're looking at these numbers like, wow, people are willing to circulate those type of dollars for that type of experience. But they're saying that there's no money out here. That just lets you know that at a particular realm, you start gatekeeping, you start propelling yourself, and you start allowing yourself, like we saw in Michael, to say, I'm shaping the narrative. I'm not allowing the narrative to shape me. And when you start to move in that, regardless of, the things that myself and Dr. Cheryl Clarke do individually and collectively, or the stuff that Ms. Johnson does out there in the marketplace, and all the great things that, Mr. Edward Franklin does, or Mr. Sampson with the funeral homes, and Edward Guthrie when it comes to dealing with real estate, and Miss McIntyre who deals with helping people from a health standpoint. You start to recognize all these different areas that you don't allow yourself to be minimized by what other people are saying. But if you stay focused on your respective path, then the toxic voices are going to come. Please believe me. Don't act like, oh no, there's no toxicity around. There's going to be toxicity. But now do you adhere to it? That's the real power. And number 3, growth. Building skill to match calling. Faith is not passive. You can always close the gap between your current capacity and your divine assignment through intentional strategic skill development and learning. All of us out here, regardless of we're in now this agentic age when we talk about AI or our respective things that we may have went to our respective, institutions of academia that we may have some levels of degrees upon. The degree doesn't really do anything, just shows that what you did. But your calling or what you're currently doing to enhance those skills is what you're doing now. Now, if you're willing to do something that's going to keep adding and keep adding and keep growing and you're evolving and you're developing, regardless of wherever it is that you are in the marketplace or the economy, then you're going to always experience growth. And I'd rather someone come to me and says, Dr. Clarke, I only experienced like 0.1% of growth today. It's like, I'm going, I only grew, that percentage. And now in the greater scheme of things, you'll be surprised how some major companies, if they're growing like that exponentially, 0.1% per day, and to see the revenue or the capabilities or the capacity of what they're generating, you'll be thankful for that 0.1%. And that's why we should always, as part of our framework, to recognize every step that gets us a little bit closer to the completion or the fulfillment of a goal is progress. Do not cheapen all of your steps that you're moving and stop looking for 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. If you don't hit that number, that means you're not growing. That means you're not giving yourself the latitude to keep it consistently going. And finally on the slide is surrender. Be it unto me. And now a little biblical reference like Mary's response to the angel, speak your willingness into the atmosphere. Surrender is not weakness. I have to say that again. Surrender is not weakness. It is the final key that unlocks full activation. See, surrendering sounds like, back in the day, you allow yourself to say, well, I got to do it myself. If I don't do it, no one's going to do it. It's like, no, that's not good. Because now, not only are you putting too much undue pressure upon yourself, but you're recognizing that means you haven't been in the spaces of sociality to develop the team or develop a team that can assist you on that path, or hire those that can help shepherd or cover a skill that you may be deficient in. None of us are perfect. We all need assistance in some way. And when you're willing to surrender and let go of it, say, you know what? I'm giving this to you as a task because I know you can handle it. That's not really my forte. And I thank God or thank the universe or thank that you're a part of my team that you're able to do this for me. And when you do that, that surrender becomes something like, oh, you gave that person power. No, actually, I just enhanced myself because I recognize that may not be my cup of tea. But for that person will sit there and crunch those numbers, or sit there and post for me, or sit there and do this and do that, or whatever it is that's needed so that the whole entire situation is moving forward. Just like that some of us were employees or currently employees, or even as entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur, you may not necessarily be an employee, but you're serving your customers, you're serving your clients. So are you serving them effectively? And do you have enough clients to say that, oh, wait a minute, I'm having a beneficial life because I have enough clients who I'm serving? Or as an employee, how many people that I'm working with that I'm seeing some level of productivity happening, which lays down a greater framework? Are there any thoughts like a Dr. Cheryl Clarke? Would you like to chime in on this slide before we start moving towards the next slide?
No, I think that was really good, Dr. Clarke. I think you summed it up really well in regards to that. I'm complete.
Excellent, excellent. Anything from Ms. Johnson? Desire to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to share in the space. So I'm not just hogging it up. It's not just a monologue, but a dialogue.
I concur with Dr. Cheryl because I had a similar conversation about some of these points earlier today, so it's very timely information.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Let us move on. Let's see. There we go. Financial integration number 4. And the reason why we're at number 4, that means you need to cash back on some of the previous weeks and some of the previous teachings. So you can see where 1, 2, and 3 lie. So yes, we're on financial integration number 4. Growth eliminates financial fear. Dr. Cheryl, can you please read that paragraph for us, please?
Sure. Fear of financial expansion is almost always rooted in a gap between calling and competency. The solution is not more faith divorced from action. It is faith expressed through deliberate growth. Confidence is built, it is not merely declared.
Before I talk about the rest of this, I'm gonna ask Dr. Cheryl just to share something because she has some relevant insight into this, into how her competency is developing and growing, even in spaces where she may not necessarily be prepared for. And as I stated in this particular paragraph, confidence is built, all of us. I'm not as confident in my skill set just because it's God given. Confidence is built over time because now you can have confidence based upon what you built, or you can be arrogant because you may have access to resources and you just have other people do it for you. But when you start to recognize that you're developing yourself expressly through the deliberate actions that are you manifesting, you start to recognize the growth because now it's yours. No one can take it away from you. No one can say, oh, I made you, or I did this for you, I did that for you. Yeah, you may have provided some resources, but I always go back to the story of Jay-Z and Dame Dash. When, Dame Dash started running around, when things started to dissolve with the Rockefeller Records, and he kept saying, I made Jay-Z. And Jay-Z could have been out there boisterous and upset and angry and disturbed, and he simply, so okay, if Dash states that he made me, he can go make another. And as we can see, they have went in two different, deliberately different directions. So what would you say to that first statement that you read, Dr. Sherman? What's coming up for you?
The fear of financial expansion is not always rooted in the gap between calling and competency. I think it's important because we can be called, but there's a gap in between understanding the pressure to understand yourself. So there's certain things that we're not, I had to learn that I very early on that I'm not an island. And if you don't, the gap could be the support. Jesus never did it alone. I think that was the thing that he showed.
Mm,
He showed us that the gap was in between of understanding, get different people from different areas of life so you can fill the gaps of different things and you can reach more people if you have that competency. You don't need everybody, but he had 12 and they all had this specific thing that they did well. And if you ever went to go watch The Chosen, it really did a really good job in understanding how Jesus selected the 12 and the gap and the reason why they were there for specific reasons. So when you're building your team, fill the gaps. Don't get people that look like you, that feel like, oh, they're the same like you. Get people that can fill the gaps in between so you can build the infrastructure further. Dr. Clarke's competencies is different from mine. My competencies is different from his. Our calling may be on the same page, but we're going to take different avenues. And the competency of gathering people to express that, to be able to move in the gaps, I think it's important for us to be able to reach more people. And I'm complete, Dr. Clarke.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. And that leads us into some of the areas where you can actually prepare yourself for growth. Yes, growth needs preparation. Don't ever think that, it's an overnight success. Even people that we may say are one-hit wonders, you'd be surprised how many nights they toiled by themselves that no one knew nothing. And even if they only had that one hit, sometimes that's better than your no hit. And sometimes we have to recognize that. Sometimes we talk about certain, entertainers, oh, they were a one-hit wonder, or they only did this greatness one time. Well, they had their genie in a bottle moment where they at least they caught our attention. They were able to express, and whatever they chose to do after that moment, if they were wise, they figured out how to multiply that one talent and make that into a capable life. And so that deals with confidence as well. But part of it is, as we see in the first box, learn high income skills. Identify the 2 to 3 skills the market rewards most generously and invest deeply in mastering them. Your calling has a skill set. Find it and sharpen it relentlessly. Like I know Mr. Franklin is into, cleaning and things of that nature and doing it in a commercial level in a high quality way. When he started to really recognize, this particular product works better for this, and as he continued to develop in his skill set, that started to generate a certain level of income for him. That was definitely different than it was in the beginning part of as he was building his business. Same thing when I've spoken to Mr. Sampson, some of the things that he learned from his grandfather and his father and things of that nature in that respective business, as he started to evolve, he started to recognize certain areas of diversification had to kick in. Certain things that they may not necessarily have done, not blaming them, but just recognize, oh, they didn't do this, but now I have an opportunity. Now it's supposed to do it like this or add this and, create this atmosphere and bring it up to another level. And it's like, wait a minute, these are high income skills. Customer service is a high income skill. Integrity is a high income skill. And at times, we have to watch when we're looking for the integrity in others, and then we don't recognize that we're supposed to have our own integrity as well. Because it's easy to point the finger outside yourself, oh, you're doing this and you're doing that, and then turn around and says, wait a minute, are you full of integrity? Sometimes we got stones we wish to throw, and we recognize that quickly we have to drop them out of our hands. So it benefits you for the long term to learn a high income skill.
Dr. Clark,
Go ahead.
you said something interesting there. I think going back to the gap with even with, if I had to say with Brother Edward, his business, he's in the commercial cleaning. He
Mhm.
doesn't clean homes. So that's the gap that he found his calling in. He can
Mhm.
clean, but his royalty group is about cleaning commercial homes. And there's so many times, and you say it a lot, about we try to be so much to everyone. What is your calling to your specific thing? And I go back to Jesus. Jesus' calling was to the people, to the poor, and really coming to say, I am the Savior, and understanding what that calling is. And when we get that, we don't have to be worrying about bringing being crabs in a barrel or bringing someone down, or even worry about someone else's integrity. If you understand what you're supposed to be doing and moving in that integrity, you can move it much, much, much more.